phones, Babylons can't crack the.
What do YouTube? B Kelly back again with another banger. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about my predictions for the Big Ten Conference for the 2020 college football season. And first, I'm going to be talking about the Big Ten East. With my first place spot in the Big Ten East, I have Ohio State. Ohio State is also my front runner to win the whole Big Ten, and I expect them in the playoffs. They have a potential Heisman winner on their roster in Justin Fields, and they have one of the best college football teams in all of college football and amazing coaching. I expect them to go undefeated, beating Bowling Green, Oregon, Buffalo, Rutgers, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State, Nebraska, Indiana, Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan in their final game, and go to the Big Ten Championship and win that as well, and go to the college football playoff. With my second place spot, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions, and I have them going 11-1 this year, and their only loss being to Ohio State. This team has a lot of good returning players and great coaching under James Franklin. But the question is, they have the pieces to compete in the Big Ten and win it all and possibly go to the playoffs. But the question is, will they be able to beat Ohio State? And this year, I don't think they will. But let's talk about the schedule. I have them going off to an amazing start, beating Kent State, Virginia Tech, San Jose State, Northwestern, Michigan, Iowa, but then losing to Ohio State at home. Then I have them winning the rest of their games, beating Indiana, Nebraska, Michigan State, Maryland, and Rutgers. You can definitely expect this team to make a lot of noise this season and to expect them in another New Year's Six bowl game like they did the season prior. With my third place spot in the Big Ten East, I have Michigan. Now, Michigan has been kind of disappointing with the hype they've been receiving in the past few years. I mean, Coach Jim Harbaugh, he cannot beat Ohio State at all, as it looks like, and they haven't gone to a Big Ten championship yet, and it's kind of disappointing. And another thing you got to bring up is, when will they actually get over that hump and be in the Big Ten championship game and beat Ohio State, who's just running that part of the Big Ten every year? But my prediction for them is that they're going to be 9-3 on the regular season, and I have them beating Washington, Ball State, Arkansas State, Wisconsin, but then losing to Penn State, beating Michigan State, losing to Minnesota, beating Purdue, Maryland, Rutgers, and Indiana in their final game of the season at Ohio State. I have them losing yet again. With my fourth place spot in the Big Ten East, I have Maryland. Maryland really looks like they're in the right direction under Coach Locksley. And I say that because they had a very good recruiting class this past season, even securing 5-star recruit Raheem Jarrett at the receiver spot. And they're making noise in the transfer portal as well. I mean, they got Tua's younger brother, Tallulah, or however you say his name. I'm going to try to get it right. I don't care. Now, I predict them to be 7-5. They had an amazing start to the season last year before being very disappointing in the end. I mean, even in the beginning of the season last year, they looked like they had one of the best offenses of all of college football, and then reality hit them in the face, and they started losing a lot. Now, I do predict them to be 7-5 on the season, which is an improvement from last season. I mean, last season they didn't even go to a bowl game. Now, let me talk about the schedule. I have them getting off to a pretty good start, beating Towson, NIU, and West Virginia. But then they lose to Minnesota, and then I have them beating Indiana and Northwestern, then losing to Wisconsin, then beating Rutgers, then losing to Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. And in their final game of the season, I do have them beating Michigan State. With my fifth place spot, I have Indiana. Now, Indiana did make some noise last season, going 8-5, which is one of their better records in the past few years. And I have them going 6-6 this season, and I have them losing to Wisconsin in their first game, then beating Western Kentucky, Ball State, and Connecticut, then losing to Maryland, beating Rutgers, beating Michigan State, losing to Penn State, Ohio State, Illinois, Michigan, but then winning their final game of the season to be bowl eligible. I have them beating Purdue. With the number 6 spot in the Big Ten East, I have Michigan State, and I have them going 4-8 on the year. They did lose some pretty good players this past season, even some players who were starters who really weren't the best players. and I have them finishing 4-8 on the year. Now, I do have them getting off to a pretty good start, starting off 3-0, beating Northwestern, BYU, and Toledo, but then losing to Miami, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, Minnesota, Penn State, then winning against Rutgers and losing to Maryland to ultimately be 4-8. My last place spot in the Big Ten East, I have Rutgers. Now, even though Rutgers did hire a very good coach in Greg Schiano, and the last time he was there, they were actually a pretty good team that was making some noise. But it's going to take a while for this team to actually be back to what it was with Greg Schiano. It's going to take a rebuild. A complete rebuild. Like, they have to do a complete 180 to go back to what they were. Because this team, they are horrendous. They are terrible. Easily one of the worst teams all college football right now. And that's going to be a pretty hard job for Greg Schiano, but he can probably do it with his coaching and his recruiting. But I only have them winning one game this season, and that's against Monmouth in their opening game. And then I have them going on a terrible losing streak, losing 11 straight games to Syracuse, Temple, Ohio State, Illinois, Purdue, Indiana, Nebraska, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State in the final game of the season. Now time for the Big Ten West predictions. With my first place spot in the Big Ten West, I have Minnesota. I do have Minnesota going undefeated in my prediction, but I could see them going 9-3, possibly 10-2. But I still think they're going to come out on top in the Big Ten West and play in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. Now, with the schedule, I have them beating Florida Atlantic, Tennessee Tech, Iowa, BYU, Maryland, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, and Nebraska. With my second place spot in the Big Ten West, I have Iowa. Iowa has a really good offensive line and a really good defense, and I think that's going to help them throughout the whole season, and I do predict a 9-3 record. I do have them beating Northern Iowa and Iowa State in the first two games, then losing to Minnesota, but that game is going to be a very good game, and I'm looking forward to it. Then I have them beating Northern Illinois and Michigan State, and losing to Ohio State and Penn State in back-to-back games. But then I have them winning out, beating Northwestern, Illinois, Nebraska, Purdue, and Wisconsin. With my third place spot, I have Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin did lose their best player in Jonathan Taylor, and I do expect them declining just a little bit, and I'm predicting an 8-4 record. Now, I do have them starting off somewhat good, beating Indiana, Southern Illinois, and Appalachian State in their first three games, but that Appalachian State game, in my opinion, is going to be a tough game just because Appalachian State is better than people actually know. But then I have them going on a 3-game losing streak, losing to Michigan, Notre Dame, and Minnesota. But then I have them picking things back up again, beating Maryland, Illinois, Northwestern, and Purdue, Nebraska, but then losing to Iowa in the final game of the season to solidify their third place spot in the Big Ten West. With my fourth place spot, I have Nebraska, and I actually have them going off to a very good start to the season. And I have them going 6-6 on the season, and congratulations, Nebraska. You actually have a chance to go to a bowl game this season under Coach Frost for once, after missing 2 straight seasons under him and being hyped up as a top 25 team back-to-back seasons. Okay, but let's get to the schedule now. Now, I have them beating Purdue, Central Michigan, and South Dakota in their first 3 games, then losing to Cincinnati, but then getting the winning streak back up again, beating Northwestern, Illinois, and Rutgers. You know, they're 6-1 on the season. They'll probably be in the top 25, maybe even inside the top 15 because they get hyped up a lot under Coach Frost. But unfortunately for them, they're more than likely going to lose the rest of their games this season, losing to Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota to finish 6-6. With my 5th place spot, I have Purdue. Now, they're in the 5th place spot because they'll have one more win than the next team in conference play, even though they have a 3-9 record. Now, I have them going off on a very bad start to the season, going 0-4, losing to Nebraska, Memphis, Air Force, and Boston College. But then I have them beating Rutgers and Illinois, then losing to Michigan, then beating Northwestern, then losing to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Indiana. Coming in at the number 6 spot, it is Illinois. Now, Illinois just last year had one of their better seasons, in the past few years, and it was a 6-7 record to end it after going to a bowl game and losing it. Now that's pretty good for Illinois. Being 6-7 is pretty good for them because they're usually one of the worst teams in all of the Big Ten. But I'm predicting a 5-7 record this year, and you may be asking, why are they under Purdue? Purdue's 3-9, you said. Now I say that because I'm predicting Purdue to have one more in-conference win than Illinois, which affects their placement in the standings. Now, I do have Illinois getting off to a quick and fast start, beating Illinois State, Connecticut, Bowling Green, and Rutgers to be 4-0. But then I have them losing a lot, losing to Nebraska, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. But finally beating Indiana, but losing their final 2 games of the season, losing to Ohio State and Northwestern. Now with my last place spot in the Big Ten West, I have Northwestern. Now Northwestern last year was easily the most disappointing team in all of college football, but their starting quarterback getting hurt definitely hurt it, because even though their starting quarterback wasn't that good in the first place, everyone behind him was garbage. Now I'm predicting a 4-8 record this year. Even though the defense is fine, the offense is terrible. Now, I do have them losing their first game at Michigan State, but then I have them beating Tulane and Central Michigan, then losing to Penn State, then losing to Nebraska, then losing to Maryland, Iowa, and losing to Purdue, and then losing to Wisconsin, but finally getting another win, beating Morgan State, but then losing to Minnesota, but then their final game of the season in Evanston, Illinois, beating Illinois to eliminate Illinois from going to a bowl game. Now, if you guys like this video, remember to smash that like button, turn on the post notifications, and subscribe for more videos. B. Kelly out.